Welcome back. I have Colleen Clarke joining me on the podcast today. Colleen, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So tough first question ahead. Who is Colleen?
How much time do we have?
About an hour.
Let's see. Well, my Instagram handle or my Instagram bio would say that I am a solar advocate, an outdoor wanderer, and I use the F word a lot. I'm pretty sure that's what my bio says word for word.
Perfect.
That sums me up.
Yeah. That works. So we connected thanks to you being a solar advocate, and you work at Freedom Solar, and that's how we got to know each other. Yes, Freedom Solar is a sponsor of this podcast, a sponsor of the planet, you could say as well. And we'll get into that. But I've found Colleen to be incredibly interesting in terms of what she does as more of an adventurer. So we're gonna start the conversation from there. So this will be, instead of for the long run, for the long hike, I guess. So when did you get into this type of adventuring?
Yeah, so it actually started with running. So it is kind of an interesting story. I used to be a former marathon runner. I used to run half marathons, but going way back, I used to do snowshoe racing out in Leadville, Colorado.
Cool.
That was a fun and rare group of individuals that liked to run in, -7 degree air temps in high elevations and, on tennis rackets. But that kind of spiraled into my love for running, and long distance running in particular, because I am not slow, but I can do things for long periods of time. Or I'm not fast, I should say. I'm pretty slow, but I can go forever. So that led into, running marathons, and my body just did not agree with it. So started getting, your typical knee problems that a lot of long distance runners have, and, ran into a lot of dead ends, and that led me into still needing to get out and do things for long periods of time, but just not running. So that led into, let's just start crushing 14ers and long hikes, and kind of getting my adrenaline boost that way.
What was the first 14er you did?
Ooh, the first 14er I ever did was Mount Quandarrie out in Summit County. But yeah, I did that one actually about 10 years ago. And then that was it. It was like a one and done. And then my challenge that I would like to do is hike every 14er in the state of Colorado. So that kicked off last year with Beardstadt, the old trusty Disneyland of 14ers in Colorado, that everyone and their dog seems to do. And I'm currently at 14 14ers out of the 50, depending on what list you're looking at, 54 or 58 14ers.
Sometimes they grow or shrink under 14,000 feet.
Yeah, well, actually, the one that I just did about a month ago, they're saying is not going to be on the list much longer, because it's at like 14,001 feet, like 1 foot right now. So it's not going to be on the list much longer. So I wanted to make sure before it shrunk, I got up there.
So for those who don't know, a 14er is a mountain that is above 14,000 feet. Many of them here in Colorado, the base is around 10 or 11,000 feet, some a little bit lower, but Quandarrie, for example, starts at 11,000 feet, and you climb about 3,300 feet. That was my first and only so far.
No way.
As well. And I've done it twice. And it's so humbling to start at 11,000 feet and just go up from there. And what I love about it is like it's a pretty strong equalizer. No matter how fit you are, nobody is like that fit over 12,000 feet. And just like the feeling of pushing to your max, and you're moving like 1 or 2 miles an hour at 13,000 feet is a feeling I hope everybody listening gets to experience one day, because it's wild, but also it usually means that there are incredible views around you.
I have to admit, I often get what I call sweaty eyeballs on 14ers, just because it's such an amazing physical feat and mental feat, and how many times your brain is like, especially above 13,000 feet, when your brain starts to get a little foggy from the elevation and your body's moving a lot slower than you're normally used to, even at higher elevations in Boulder, Colorado Springs, or Denver. Above 12,000 feet, I start to feel it, and 13,000 feet, I definitely really feel it. But yeah, there's some beautiful places out there that you have to climb to get to.
For sure. So background is a marathoner. How did you get into running?
So funny enough, I used to live in Breckenridge, Colorado a while back.
Great running town.
Yeah, fantastic. And
Breckenridge is also at 10,000 feet.
Yep, exactly. Apparently I don't like oxygen. That's kind of my thing. But I think just living in that town, you naturally kind of start to see other people doing things, and you're like, hey, I want to try that. And I just started like a couch to 5K program, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And like started trail running, and did my first 5K. And that, and the running community knows, that lends itself to go into, well, wait, I want to do an 8K. I want to do a 10K. What about a 12K? And that spiraled into my first half marathon, and just the energy of the race itself, and kind of conquering something that you're only, to me, in competition with yourself, is kind of what I thrive off of. So I think that's why I gravitated to that, as well as what, climbing 14ers has that same mentality.
For sure. So we're right in the peak of marathon season, pun intended. And I last year, prior to Boston, I tweeted something about like, if you're going to ask me what my marathon goal time is, I'm going to respond sub 2, which is so ridiculous, because like only 1 or 2 people in the world can make that like an actual goal. And the reason that I said that is because without context, a marathon time is completely meaningless unless it's under 2 hours. Like I've had friends who run 2:30, 2:35, and they're disappointed with their time. And I have friends that they would be thrilled to break 5. And so the number doesn't tell the story. It's the journey of start to finish, but also all the miles it takes to get there. And I feel like trail running and like mountain climbing, not like scaling mountains, but hiking up mountains, is like very much the epitome of that. It is truly a competition with yourself, if that's how you want to see it, or it's just, how do I get the most out of myself? Which I think is really cool, where like, again, the marathon has this elusive sub 3 or BQ or whatever. And there are so many people that can go couch to marathon and BQ. It just like doesn't mean anything. It's not a 5-year journey that it took to do that. Whereas something like, which isn't to say it's not a good goal. It's definitely a great goal. And the context around like, oh, and that was like a 30-minute progression, or, oh, that was, it took me 3 years to accomplish that. Like, that's what I find to be meaningful. And these cool hikes that you do are definitely up on that list. So you did your first 14er 10 years ago, and now you've done 14 of it's like 50 plus, right?
Yeah.
So why did that become the goal for you?
I set weird goals for myself. Like every year, I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person, but I like to just kind of think forward and what's going to give my life texture and meaning and challenging. And a few years ago, it was 200 yoga classes, and I hit that on New Year's Eve with my 200th class. And I learned a lot about myself from achieving that goal. Last year, it was to do the Manitou incline 52 times, so once a week. So I did that last year, which is, it pales in comparison. There's actually, there was a world record set on the Manitou incline last month. This gentleman named Crazy Bob, and he is in fact crazy. He did it 8 times a day in October. So he joined a club of over, I think it was 400,000 something, like maybe it was feet in elevation. I don't know if that makes sense. I have to do the math, but he 8 times a day did the incline over the whole month of
So
October.
it's about
So
16,000 feet a day. Yeah, it's about 500,000 feet of gain.
okay.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
Insane. But, I think doing the incline that much and just kind of being out there, and that in and of itself, if you haven't done it, it's just such a cool culture, especially the sunrise crowd that I usually go with, with a headlamp and kind of rise with the sun, so to speak, on the mountain. That's where all the local crazies are on it. But it's just such a unique experience because everyone out there is just out there to push themselves, see what they're made of, challenge themselves, humble themselves. To me, it's like a meditative experience, climbing up the steps and just kind of one foot in front of the other just to get to the goal and get to the top. It's just interesting, but that kind of led into, well, if I can climb 2,000 feet in under an hour, why am I not doing this on other mountains, So that's kind of what last year sparked me to start climbing 14ers. And then this year, my goal was to do 10 in total for the course of the year, which I hit a couple months ago. But I'll probably end the year at maybe 13, maybe 13. I'd like to do a couple more this year in the snow.
And you've had a couple of days where you've hit multiples with pretty early morning starts.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about at like 3 a.m. when you're setting off for a few hours in the dark for 2 or 3 or 4 summits?
Yeah. And I do a lot of them solo, to be honest. Like my job is very people oriented and I manage, 2 sales teams in the state of Colorado for solar. And I'm a very introverted person. So for me to kind of, I'm great with people, which is why I love what I do, but I need that disconnect and I need to get out into the trees and kind of get lost in that kind of thing. But I think that's one of the reasons I do it. But yeah, going solo and being out there with a headlamp at 3 a.m. in the trees on a trail that you've never been on, the first thing that goes through my mind is I hope that noise was not a mountain lion. That's definitely, and number 2 is I hope that wasn't a bear. But I think it's interesting, like, and I don't know if you experience this as well, but like putting yourself out of your comfort zone, the more you do it and the way you see yourself grow from that, the more you crave being out of your comfort zone. And that's what that does to me is like you're out there and you're doing something that's intimidating to you. You're scared. Like, I think people see the Instagram highlights of it and they're like, wow, look at that view and that sunset. And they don't realize that you were just like scared as shit out there in the dark with a headlamp. There was actually one I did over the summer where my headlamp started dying. And it was like 4 a.m. I'm hiking up this trail. My headlamp starts dying. I know. Maybe it's time. For a new, actually, the headlamp I'm using is one I won in a snowshoe race out in Frisco like 12 years ago. So it has a bond with me. But yeah, so that's definitely what I'm thinking about at 4 a.m. when it's dark in the forest.
The pushing outside the comfort zone is interesting. I am afraid of nighttime adventures and wildlife. And people are like, oh my God, you live in Colorado. Are you afraid of wildlife? And I don't know. And like so much so that I spent 5 months living at my parents' house on Cape Cod. And they live right in front of like about 50 miles of conservation land trails. And this is Cape Cod. And it's like very not scary when it comes to wildlife. And I was like afraid of it. It took me a while to build up to like the ability to run deep into those trails. Like that there is always a highway within, I don't know, 3 miles. It's not really deep in the trails. And then I saw a coyote. And so I was like, okay, a little bit of validation there. But and then out here, I've noticed the same thing, like the exposure therapy of just going out there and doing it and doing it and doing it. And then every so often you like do run into wildlife. I ran into 3 moose on High Lonesome Loop a few months ago. And just this past weekend, I was like, there were a bunch of cows on the trail I was trying to get through. And like cows are huge. They're not like scary animals like a mountain lion. It's not going to eat you. But if it's on the
Yeah.
path and you have to get around it, it's like frightening. But um, it's that same vibe of like, okay, I did that. Now I can do it again. And
Hmm.
that's the part that's valuable. And that's the part that has so much spillover in my mind with business and entrepreneurship and like all of this stuff outside of running or hiking. We're both in sales for our
Mhm.
career, and so it's very much very applicable when it comes to like setting big goals and just like doing it and failing, or doing it and succeeding, and then just like growing from that. So I'm curious for you, have you thought about the tangible overlap, or the overlap between all of these endurance pursuits and sort of the business world?
Yeah. Have you ever heard there's a saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything?
Yeah.
Um, and I truly believe that. I really think that, at your core, how you do things is going to be a constant, whether it's in your, professional life, your personal life, spiritual, whatever. And I think there's so much to be said for how that permeates into everything that you do. And being in sales and managing, a high volume team, you need to learn that like sometimes you need to humble yourself and do the scary things and put yourself out there. And to me, leading by example is super important in that. And even though, my job is not a player coach role, it's just a coach role and managing my teams, what I do in my life is kind of leading by example for them in conquering things that are bigger than myself. And when you're in the home talking to homeowners about going solar and answering all of their questions, having the courage to ask the right questions and stay in the home until they have the right answers that they can confidently say yes to going solar and be excited and happy about it and all of that, it's a hard thing to do, you know.
What's what's a specific, or do you have a specific example of like a day on the trails that you think about in daily life?
Mm, man, I would say, I'm trying to think. There was I would say Mount Yale was one of the 14ers that I did, and it's not a terribly hard one. I want to say it's double digits in mileage. I think the elevation gain is close to like 4,000. So it's not a tiny hill to climb. It's definitely a bigger one. But I learned a lot of lessons on that one. And I slept in my Jeep the night before at the trailhead because I wanted to get a 4 a.m. start. This was the one where my headlamp was dying. I had a lot working against me on this hike. I didn't sleep well because I had headlights, throughout the night driving down the road as I was sleeping in my car, trying to sleep in my car. So I was not rested. I kind of last minute decisioned going out there to sleep at the trailhead, so I didn't fuel properly as I would have normally. My headlamp was dying when I started the trail. There was just a lot of things that were kind of working against me, and I cannot tell you. I would like at least 100 times in my brain. I was having that conversation of I want to stop, I want to quit. I just turn back now and call it a day. What am I trying to prove here? Like this is really hard. Um, there were a few tears, it was definitely something where I was really pushing myself to like my mental and physical max. And then as you get to like 13,000 feet and you're like taking 7 steps and then stopping for 20 seconds to catch your breath, and then you're taking another 7 steps because that's all your body can, allow yourself to do. And like going through that for a couple hours at one shot, and like kind of existing in that grit mentality and pushing yourself to that limit for that extended period of time is like, with long distance running, like that's what we crave. But in the moment it feels so real and so raw and so like sometimes terrible. And then you get to the top and like you take that last step and you are on the top and you've stopped climbing and that like you didn't give up, and like like that feeling stays with you and it becomes a part of you in everything that you do, right? When you're facing any kind of a problem, those moments that you prove to yourself who you are and what you're worth, they're priceless, right?
Yeah, it's the like this sucks in the moment, but definitely worth it for the long run. In the long run. Always be branding, right? Yeah, that
always be branding, ABB.
It's so real though, right? Like things would be so boring if they were easy, right? One of the hardest things I ever did was the Grand Canyon. It was rim to rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, and it took like 3.5 hours to climb out of that from the base. And in that moment, all you want is to be done. And then when you're done, you're like, okay, I kind of wish I could like suffer a bit more. That was awesome to overcome that. And it's so weird how that works, but I don't know. That's like why I like this podcast and this exploration, because it's like understanding how do we get into that? How do we give ourselves the ability to suffer like that and persevere, and then cross that barrier? Because at some point you're able to like turn off this sucks and turn on the like pressure is a privilege and I get to hurt. And when you can get to that point, it's you can unlock that next level. And to me, it took me like 6 marathons to get to that point where I could actively like choose more discomfort. And it was a marathon I ran in 2019, which is my current PR. And like things were starting to slow down at 18, and like by mile 20, I was like, okay, you've come this far, like make it hurt more. And it's so fun when you can like unlock that mental next level, or that get to that place when it's just like, wow, this sucks, but I get to do this. And another one, you've done the 4-pass loop, right?
Is it otherwise known as Decalibron?
No, so I want to do that. The 4-pass loop is for 12,000 foot passes outside of Aspen. And I had a really tough day out there, and I was doing it with a bunch of friends, and I was dragging ass up the 3rd climb, and my friend was just up ahead of me, and she was also struggling, and she's like, we chose to be here. And it's so powerful when you like put the struggle into that, like, this is optional. Like nobody's making you do this. And you can just reframe it as like,
yeah,
we chose to be here. So
yeah,
anyway,
no, I agree.
I think
everything is a choice. Or a lot, depending. But no, I like what you said there. Pressure is a privilege, and it's so true. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me getting back out there, is my life is rooted in gratitude for what my body can do and what my brain can do. And it's fun to push those limits and see how far can I take it, right? In kind of this twisted way.
So how do you intentionally practice gratitude?
Yeah, I have grateful tattooed on my arm. But yeah, I think that, I want to live an abundant life, and you can't have abundance without being grateful for what you currently have. And just kind of being rooted in the present is another reason, I think, for getting out there on these long hikes too, because nothing will bring you more in tune to where you are right now than not having a cell phone signal and being out in nature by yourself, depending on which one you're on. Some of them are quite busy and you never feel alone, but I try to avoid those as much as I can. But yeah.
So yeah, it's like a freeing feeling, right? Especially the places without cell coverage. We're so hyper connected these days, and the like forced disconnect is super fun. I love the thing about Colorado when like you text a friend and they don't text you back for 5 hours and it comes back green, or it goes through green. There was a meme the other day. It was like, um, something about, I'm gonna butcher it. Anyway, it was like, your friend is having a great day in Colorado when your text is delivered as green, and it's so true. It's like, how infrequently are we forced to be fully present um, with ourselves and with those around us? And that was one of the reasons I loved doing this podcast initially. My first 50 episodes were all in person. And so it's like forcing you to pay attention to the person that you're talking with. And like, that never happens anymore for more than like 30 seconds at a time in today's world. And so this medium, or this, being out in nature with friends, where it's like, work can wait, Twitter can wait, all this stuff can wait, because it has to. There's no option. It's nice.
No, it's that's so true. And I don't know, I listened to the Rich Roll podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
But he interviewed Colin O'Brady, and he wrote the book, The 12-Hour Walk. And he came up with this idea when he did this like Antarctica expedition that he was, that man has just done a lot. He's climbed like Everest 4 times, and he holds some records in like high altitude climbing. But he wrote this book on the 12-hour walk because during COVID, he realized how attached he was to everything, and people having to stay in their homes and not leaving. And he just needed to get out. So he literally put his phone on airplane mode for 12 hours unintentionally, like to start the day. But it turned into, he just walked for 12 hours with no outside anything. And he came back and he was so excited for like how present, how centered he was, and told his wife, like, you have to do this. She ended up trying it. And then he ended up writing an entire book called The 12-Hour Walk, and is encouraging other people to go on this journey to kind of recenter and like gain the sense of, presence and clarity that we just don't allow ourselves to have, in 2022.
So is that part of the reason you love it? I know you mentioned that you're an introvert and you run 2 teams. Is part of the reason you love these adventures for that? I don't want to call it an escape, but alternative.
Yeah, I think so. I think honestly, like, the world we live in is just so fast paced, and there's so much overstimulation happening, and everyone's connected to their phones, and people are, driving like maniacs and getting frustrated. We all have those moments, right? Like, why is this person going 33 miles an hour in a 35? I got to get somewhere quick, and just having that mentality, it's so unhealthy to me. And I think gravitating towards like leaving all of that behind and connecting to whatever's important to you. And to me, like, seeking stillness is such a vital part in growth, and just truly taking a minute to listen to like what my body needs, what my brain needs, what my spirituality needs. And you can't find that when you're moving so fast and everything's so blurry, because you're moving that fast. And I think that's one of the reasons I love hiking. Like, I know a lot of people in Colorado do mountain biking and things like that. It's something I've never really personally gotten into because I just like to take it all in. Right. And I'd rather go hike for 14 miles than mountain bike,
Yeah, the stillness aspect of it, like with mountain biking, or even like trail running at times, you're like so engaged in the land, like the next 10 feet, because otherwise you crash or roll your ankle or whatever. Yeah, there's like a stillness with it for sure. So what's on the list for the rest of this year?
Well, I'm going to do the Manitou Incline tomorrow morning, bright and early with the sun. So that's that. And
it's not even that early.
Probably
it's bright and late.
Yeah. No doubt. I know. With the time change happening this weekend, though, that'll be nice. But yeah, I'll probably knock out a couple more 14ers, and I'd like to do some of the more popular ones in the winter, just to kind of get out there and experience them in all their glory without the crowds, And I would like to try ice climbing. That's on my agenda. I definitely think that it's a cool sport, and I would like to. Ouray, the town of Ouray, has an ice climbing festival every January, and they have a women's specific ice climbing clinic. So I think I might look into that and get out there just to kind of challenge myself. And I think too, if I'm going to conquer all of the 14ers, I'm going to have to develop my climbing skills more than what they are, and just going to like the local indoor climbing gym. You know, I need to kind of get more exposure if I'm going to conquer all of these 14ers, because they only get harder.
For sure. Ouray is beautiful. This photo is from about 2,000 feet above the town on, I believe it's called the Weehawken Trail. Anyway, it's like a absolutely stunning 3-ish mile climb to the top, and then you're like 3,000 feet above the town, and you can look down and see it enclosed. Like it's basically like being hugged by the 3 surrounding mountains. What a stunning area!
So good.
I have that photo for those who can't see it because you're listening to this episode. We're now doing YouTube, so you can see it in the future. So check out this podcast on YouTube going forward. But I have this photo this is February of 2021. And then I have the same photo from July or August of 2021. Basically the same spot, just about 10 feet of snow less in the second one. 10 less feet of snow in the second one. Absolutely stunning area.
I love that.
Yeah. So as someone who's focused on endurance pursuits as well as on the business side of things, which I'm sure we'll get into briefly in a little bit. I'm curious what your definition of success is.
Ooh, my definition of success, yeah, that definitely means something different to everybody. I think I have a lot of conversations with some of my friends that are in the business as well about grit and like what that means. And to me, like grit is you have a goal, and the goal doesn't necessarily deviate, but the means in which you get there can. So like learning how to adapt instead of give up, or understanding when to fold and maybe change the goal slightly or things like that. I just think having that persistence and your eye is always at the top of the mountain. Things might get in the way, and you might have obstacles, or you might have turbulence or weather or things like that kind of deter you. But like not giving up to me is not, I mean, that's like a superpower, and it's also probably a toxic trait as well. To, just make things happen no matter what. We're not giving up, but, being able to do that and allowing yourself grace at the same time and having that balance is, to me, what makes somebody successful. Are you pushing yourself, but are you still happy? There's an extent to where you're pushing yourself and you're just ridden with anxiety. To me, that's not success. It doesn't have anything to do with the dollar amount in your bank account or things like that. But what is the mental health and your physical health in comparison to your goals and what you're trying to pursue?
I love that answer. Yeah. Because the end goal is a waste of time if you sacrifice your happiness along the way. Like, what's the point of XYZ if getting to XYZ destroys you or ruins relationships or, makes you unhappy and whatnot? Some of it is like, yes, you have to work, but there's definitely a balance or an ebb and a flow in that. Okay, so you work at Freedom Solar. Freedom Solar is, in full transparency, a sponsor of this podcast, has been since April of 2022. I've had a couple of your colleagues on the podcast. The episode I did with Brett Biggert, your CEO, was fantastic. We spoke for like 55 minutes, and then we were like, oh, we should probably talk about solar a little bit. Brett is incredible. His story was super inspiring. The reason that we couldn't get into solar right until the end, because I was so like enthralled with everything he was saying. I'm just looking up the number episode that it was, so that I can mention that for those who didn't listen to it. We released it on Earth Day of 2022. So it was back in April. Anyway, I'll find it and put it in the show notes. Anyway, Brett talked about his experience as an alcoholic and somebody who was broke and without a job, and really didn't know what to do with his life. This was about 10 plus years ago at this point. And
Mm-hmm.
he ended up linking up with someone who had complementary skills to him, where he was good at some things and the other person was good at other things. And fast forward a few years, and we've got a huge solar company that operates in Colorado, North Carolina, Texas, Florida. What state am I missing? That's all of them. Virginia.
So we're on the Virginia. Yep. I was gonna say we're penetrating the East Coast a little bit. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's the company I went solar with. It's been fascinating to learn from Brett about sort of how he runs a business, and it's the servant leadership that I find to be so inspiring. That's how my company's CEO operates as well. And for those who aren't familiar with that principle, I would definitely suggest looking it up. It's a fascinating concept, and really leads to impactful work and strong relationships with colleagues. Anyway, first, I want to thank Freedom Solar for sponsoring this podcast. It has enabled me to continue to put out all this information. And the conversation I had with them was trail runners love things that help them protect the earth, feel good about what they're doing, and also save money. And so we've had a lot of people who listen to this podcast go solar. And now they are actually supporting other content creators in the endurance space. So it's really cool to see them investing into this community, into this medium, as well as other athletes. And my passion is, how do we enable more people to do what they love? And for some, that's podcasting, for some, that's being an athlete, et cetera. And it's really cool to see Freedom Solar helping to enable that. Incredibly long preamble to this part of the conversation, but I'm curious how you got into solar.
Yeah, I've only been in solar for 2 years. So my background is in the finance industry from when I lived back in Chicago. And when I moved back to Colorado for the second time 2 years ago, my mission was to get out of the finance industry for several reasons. And specifically get into solar, right? And I think similar to people that are looking into going solar for their home, you do your research, you want to make sure you're going with the right company and that kind of thing. And I wasn't excited about the companies that I was interviewing with. And I was like, well, maybe I need to rethink this thing. I had a job offer on the table from a finance firm to do something very similar to what I've been doing with Freedom. And I ran into Freedom Solar, and the rest is history. I left the finance world behind, and my mission was to create sales teams to go out there and educate homeowners on how solar can help them and help the environment, help their electric bill, and things like that. And it's been 2 years, almost to 2 years this week that I've been with Freedom Solar.
What are some of the common misconceptions that people have in regards to getting started with solar? And then I'll tell you what mine were.
Okay. I'll say that the first couple that come to mind, there's a lot of advertising out there for different companies and state initiatives and things like that. We have a lot of people that have the misconception that solar is free. It is not free. Nothing in this world is, besides the air we breathe. But there's a lot of marketing out there that will allude to, the state of Colorado is giving homeowners free solar. That does not exist. So I would say that's one. And another one I would say is the exact opposite, is that solar is too expensive, right? And to me, staying on your utility company, that's too expensive because you don't have control over their continual hikes that they're raising, their hourly their electric rates. They're raising the time of use now, which is becoming a thing that during peak hours, they're charging sometimes quadruple the normal rates during times where they know people are home and running laundry and cooking dinner and playing video games and all of that. And to me, gaining energy independence is an important thing to kind of get away from that, right? But I think people think that it's too expensive, but if you add up over time, you're not going to not pay your electric bill, right? So if you add up over time the course of a solar loan for, whatever you decide, whether that's a short 5-year loan up to like a 25-year loan, you would have already been paying that money to the utility company, if not more. So oftentimes we're finding when somebody, signs up for a loan to pay for their solar system, their loan monthly payment is equal to, if not around, a cup of coffee difference between what they're already paying, so you're just paying that money to yourself, essentially, kind of like buying a house versus renting. Are you going to rent your electricity from the utility company, or are you going to buy solar panels to produce the power for your own home, right?
The latter was exactly why I mean, besides not owning a home, but when I first started looking into it, I was like, nope, probably not going to make economic sense, but I'm curious anyways. And so I was running probably $120 a month electrical bill in a single family home. And the option for a loan was $91 a month to cover 99% or 100% of the cost. And that, pretty sure that included the cost of the loan itself. So it was like 1 point something percent interest, which is like free money, particularly if you're going to net $40 a month from day one and forever. And I reached out to Freedom Solar after I bought the panels because I was like, I feel like I know enough, or I know a lot. And I was so candidly like pissed off that it had never been communicated to me in a way that was like reasonable. Like the way that we talk about it, it's like, okay, day one, if you choose financing, you can save $40 a month for the next 25 years. And then you have no payments ever. And I was like, I must communicate this. Like, this is so good for the environment. I've had discussions with people who are focused on environmental efforts. I had Canyon Woodward on the podcast. I believe that episode's airing soon. And he's a environmental activist and higher end runner. And we talked about like the ways to have an impact, right? Like recycling. It kind of only works if every single person does it, and if everything that gets recycled actually gets recycled. But I think like there was a report, there's like 5% of things that get recycled. So he talked about policy.
It's awful.
Yeah, voting and policy driving actual impact when it comes to protecting the environment. And so we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which increased the solar credit to 30%. So you get back 30%. So it's like these things that incentivize population change. That's how we make an impact when it comes to the environment. But for me, it felt like, okay, it's like throwing a dart into the ocean with recycling, whereas solar or these types of things, installing more insulation into your roof to help the bleeding of energy, like right out the house, and basically wasting money. It feels like that kind of stuff is actually having an impact. So it's super cool what you all are up to. And I also want to thank Freedom Solar for sponsoring this podcast and making it possible to do what you guys are doing at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, just something I'd like to add to that, because solar is becoming a lot more prevalent, especially after the new policy that came out, and 30% that you can claim on your taxes from the total cost of your solar system is renewed for 10 years, which is amazing.
Oh, I didn't even know
so
that.
The industry is only going to continue. Yeah, it's for 10 years. It's for 10 years. But what that's also producing is there's these smaller companies that are coming in, and they just want to get in it to jump on the bandwagon, make money, and move on. And one of the reasons I was diligent on researching the company that I'm now working for was, are they being ethical about it, right? Because that's something that's just always been very important to me. What type of businesses am I supporting? How am I investing my money? Is it ethical? And kind of what's under the rug kind of mentality. I'm always a little skeptical of, what's going on. But, working with Freedom Solar, we're a master dealer for SunPower, which I know that was the specific solar panel, company that you wanted to go with. And they have a cradle to cradle program, which means their panels can be recycled at the end of their life. No other solar manufacturer that I know of does that. So that's not burying the lead when it comes to going solar, because you think you're helping the environment, but then if they just go throw these panels in a landfill when they're done, well, what that kind of defeating the purpose. And then SunPower actually has something in their contract with any of their direct suppliers that they have to verify that they're not engaged directly or indirectly in human trafficking, slavery, things like that. So they're, to me, just going a couple levels deeper into who's manufacturing these panels, where are they coming from, and just not burying the lead when it comes to going solar. And I think that was something really important to me. And I know it's important to, people that are like-minded in Colorado and Boulder, where you're at, in choosing something that's sustainable, not just kind of on the surface, but that beyond that, they're actually doing good for the planet and for social efforts and things like that.
Totally. Yeah. I think there are so many options out there when it comes to buying anything, and voting with our dollars is the only way to create change or enable the companies and brands that are doing it the right way to continue to do it the right way. And so it's cool. I didn't know that about the cradle to cradle with the panels. That's super cool. Yeah. SunPower was the manufacturer that I wanted to go with. So for those who aren't in Colorado, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, or Virginia, we recommend SunPower, but go to their website and find a dealer that works for you. And as always, please shoot me questions. I can pass them along to Colleen, or I can try and answer them myself. When it comes to solar, it's much more simple than you might think. So switching gears to a little rapid fire round of questions.
Okay.
We have a little this or that. We're trying out a new segment here on the podcast. So if you'll humor me with a couple of questions here, we'll go from there. So this or that, phone call or text?
Phone call.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Iced or hot?
Ooh, what time of year is it? I'll go hot.
All right. Dogs or cats? I think I know the answer to this one.
Dogs, all the way.
Running, road or trail?
Trail.
Seems silly to ask that one. Podcasts or music?
Oh, that's like asking tacos or no tacos.
That's the next question.
Tacos or pizza. I don't know. Oh gosh, I called it. Man, podcast or music. I love them both equally. I cannot answer. I will go to my grave with that answer.
Perfect.
I want both.
Okay. Ironically, the next question is pizza or tacos?
Oh, I'm originally from Chicago, so I have to say pizza. That's my only reason.
Okay, fair enough. First word that comes to mind when you think of your hiking journey?
Transcendence.
Ooh, like that. What is your favorite recovery meal?
So I eat primarily plant-based. There is a place out here that does a vegan chicken sandwich, and they have the best French fries this side of the Mississippi. So if I've just crushed like a double-digit hike or 14er, that is where I stop on my way home to then sit on my couch and ice my knee and watch documentaries about mountains while I'm recovering from being in the mountains. That's kind of my ritual.
Nice. So I assume you've been to Golden Burrow in Leadville. Oh my God.
I don't know that I have. And now I'm going to have to go do that.
Okay. You're going to have to go do a 14er in Leadville. Please bring me with you.
Okay.
And then go to Golden Burrow. It's a vegan like diner, and it's incredible. So boom, there you go.
Okay.
Well, Colleen, this was this was so fun. You've gotten a new restaurant recommendation out of it. The listeners or viewers have hopefully learned a thing or two about your endurance pursuits and maybe even solar. And thanks so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course.